Mira stood frozen in the sterile corridor, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry wasps. Her cream blouse had a streak of crimson across the sleeve. Not her blood, but it might as well have been. Through the small window of the ICU door, she could see Junho's still form beneath white sheets. Monitors beeping steadily, chest rising and falling with mechanical precision. The doctors said he'd wake up. They said the crash was minor, that the airbag deployed, that luck was on his side. But Mira knew better. There was no such thing as luck in their world. Only calculation. Only chess moves played 3 steps ahead. The footsteps behind her were deliberate, measured, familiar in a way that made her spine straighten and her breath catch. You always loved me more when I was dangerous. The voice rolled through her like thunder before a storm. Deep, velvet-wrapped steel, carrying the weight of years and unfinished conversations. She didn't turn immediately. Couldn't. Because turning meant acknowledging what she'd been running from for 3 years. Turning meant facing the man who'd taught her what love felt like when it burned so hot it left scars. When she finally did turn, Jung-tae stood 5 feet away, hands in the pockets of his tailored black coat, dark eyes fixed on her with an intensity that could melt glass. He looked exactly the same. Sharp jawline, silver ring through his left eyebrow, that dangerous smile that never quite reached his eyes. "What are you doing here?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "My brother was in an accident." He tilted his head slightly. "Where else would I be?" "Away. Like you've been for the past year." "I came back." He took a step closer. "For family." The way he said family made it clear he wasn't talking about Junho. If you're already hooked and want to see where this dangerous love triangle leads, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me whose side you're on. Team Junho or Team Jung-tae? Because trust me, this story is about to get messy. ***. 3 years earlier, Mira had been someone else entirely. She'd just moved to Seoul from Paris, carrying her Nigerian mother's resilience and her Korean father's stubborn pride in equal measure. 24 years old, working as a cultural liaison for a tech startup, fluent in 4 languages and confident in none of them when it came to matters of the heart. Her father had passed when she was 16, leaving her mother to raise her alone in Lagos before Mira won a scholarship to study in France. She'd built her life from scratch, learned to code, learned to negotiate, learned to present Korean traditional culture to Western investors and Western innovation to Korean corporations. She was good at bridging worlds because she'd always existed between them. Jung-tae had crashed into her life at an art gallery opening in Gangnam. Literally crashed. He'd been backing away from an overeager collector and stepped directly into her path, sending her champagne flute flying and her carefully curated composure shattering. "I'm not apologizing," he'd said, grinning as he handed her his pocket square to dab at her dress. "You were drinking cheap champagne anyway. I did you a favor. This is a $2,000 dress. Then you have terrible taste in both champagne and fashion." She should have walked away. Every rational cell in her body screamed at her to walk away. Instead, she'd laughed. That laugh changed everything. "I'm Jung-tae," he'd said, extending his hand. "And you're going to have dinner with me tomorrow night." "Am I?" "Yes. Because you're the first person in 6 months who's looked at me like I'm interesting instead of useful." He wasn't wrong. There was something magnetic about him. The way he moved through the crowd like he owned the space, the way his smile held secrets, the way his eyes stayed locked on hers even when other people tried to claim his attention. That dinner turned into 3 more dinners. Then late-night walks along the Han River. Then weekends in Busan where they ate street food and argued about everything from philosophy to the best Korean dramas. That was the beginning of the end. Jung-tae didn't do anything halfway. When he loved with the force of a hurricane. All-consuming, thrilling, utterly destructive. He showed up at her apartment at 2 in the morning with street food and poetry. He flew her to Jeju Island on a Tuesday because she mentioned she'd never seen the sunrise from Songsan. He memorized the way she took her coffee and the names of every person who'd ever heard her. He learned her mother's favorite flowers and sent them to Lagos every month. He commissioned a custom piece of jewelry that combined Adinkra symbols with Korean knotwork. He learned basic Yoruba phrases just to make her smile. "Ikaero, my beautiful love," he'd whisper in the mornings, his pronunciation terrible, but his intent clear. She'd fallen so hard, so fast. that she didn't notice the warning signs until she was already drowning. It started small. Questions about where she'd been. Suggestions about what she should wear. Comments about her male colleagues that seemed like jokes, but carried sharp edges. Then it escalated. He needed to know her schedule every day. Called 17 times if she didn't answer within an hour. Got into a fist fight with a colleague who looked at her too long at a company dinner, breaking the man's nose and nearly getting arrested. He was disrespecting you, Jung Tae had said afterwards, blood on his knuckles, eyes wild with righteousness. He was asking about a project deadline. He was looking at you like you were something he could have. So you assaulted him? I protected what's mine. That word, mine, had sent ice through her veins. But she'd stayed. Made excuses. Told herself he was just passionate, just protective, just struggling with his own demons from a childhood she didn't fully understand. She started changing herself to keep the peace. Dressed more conservatively. Came home earlier. Stopped going to after-work drinks with colleagues. Deleted male contacts from her phone. Became smaller and smaller until she barely recognized herself. I need you to breathe, she'd told him one night after he'd shown up at her office unannounced for the third time that week, accusing her assistant, a gay man in his 50s, of wanting her. I am breathing. You're my oxygen. It sounded romantic. It felt like drowning. The final straw came on a Saturday morning. She'd woken up to find him going through her phone while she slept, reading messages from her mother, her friends, her co-workers, looking for evidence of betrayal that didn't exist. What are you doing? She'd asked, sitting up in bed. Making sure you're loyal. Loyal? Jung Tae, I've never even looked at another man since we started dating. That you'll admit to. Something inside her broke in that moment. Not her love for him. That would take longer to die. But her acceptance of the situation. Her willingness to keep shrinking. I can't do this anymore, she'd said quietly. He'd frozen, phone still in his hand. Can't do what? This. Us. The constant suspicion. The jealousy. The way you love me like I'm something you need to guard instead of someone you chose to be with. I love you more than anything. You love the idea of me. The version you can control and predict and keep in a box. She'd gotten out of bed, started pulling clothes from the closet. But I'm a person, Jung Tae. Not a possession. Where are you going? Away. I don't know where yet, but away from this. He'd begged, cried, promised to change, made grand gestures and heartfelt declarations. She'd left anyway. Packed her bags while he was on a business trip 2 weeks later, changed her number, moved to a different district, blocked him on every platform. It was the only way, clean break, total severance, because anything less would have given him a thread to pull. She'd cried for 3 months straight. More not just Jung Tae but the version of herself who'd believed that kind of intensity was love. And then, at a charity gala for children's hospitals, she'd met Junho. Junho was different in every way that mattered. Where Jung Tae was fire and chaos, Junho was steady warmth and careful thought. He didn't fill every silence with words. He didn't need to possess her to love her. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. She'd noticed him first, standing alone near the bar, watching the crowd with the kind of analytical gaze that suggested he was cataloging people rather than enjoying them. He wore his tuxedo like armor, perfectly tailored but somehow uncomfortable, and kept checking his watch like he was counting down to escape. Not a fan of galas, she'd asked, sidling up beside him. He'd turned, and she'd been struck by his eyes, dark and intelligent, with laugh lines at the corners that suggested he smiled more than his current expression indicated. Is it that obvious? You've checked your watch 4 times in the last 10 minutes, and you're standing in the one corner, without any art to admire. I'm strategic about my suffering. He'd smiled then, and it transformed his face completely. I'm Junho, and you're observant. Mira, and you're avoiding someone. Multiple someones. Investors who think a charity gala is the perfect place to pitch new projects. You're that Junho, the tech genius who built the translation app that's revolutionizing global commerce. I'm a programmer who got lucky with timing. Modest. That's refreshing. Their first conversation lasted 4 hours, tucked away in a corner while the gala swirled around them. He told her about losing his mother young, about building his tech empire from a single app developed in his college dorm room, about the tattoos hidden beneath his perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit, a full sleeve of geometric patterns that represented every major decision he'd made. Why hide them, she'd asked. Because people judge ink before they judge character. He'd smiled, soft, genuine. But I show them to people who matter. She'd told him about growing up between cultures, about her father's death and her mother's strength, about building a career out of translation and cultural bridging, about feeling like she was always code-switching between versions of herself. Maybe that's not a weakness, Junho had said thoughtfully. Maybe that's your superpower. Being able to see multiple perspectives, to exist in multiple worlds without losing yourself. It was the first time anyone had framed her duality as strength instead of confusion. They'd exchanged numbers that night. Had coffee 3 days later. Then dinner. Then a weekend trip to his family's house in the countryside where he showed her the garden his mother had planted before she died. I keep it exactly as she left it, he'd said, walking between rows of roses and herbs. It's the one thing I can't optimize or improve. It just exists as it was. That's beautiful. It's sentimental and inefficient. It's human. He'd looked at her then with something that might have been wonder. You see things differently than I do. Is that good or bad? It's necessary. 3 months later, they were inseparable. 6 months after that, he'd proposed. Not with a spectacle. Not with cameras and crowds. Just the two of them in his penthouse kitchen at dawn, her in his shirt and him in sleep pants. Coffee brewing, city waking up beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. I want every morning to look like this, he'd said simply, pulling a ring box from the coffee tin where he'd hidden it. You, me, building something that lasts. She'd said yes before he even opened the box. The ring was perfect, a simple platinum band with a black diamond, unconventional and striking, just like their relationship. And if this is giving you all the feels right now, show some love with a like. Because Myra's about to find out that marrying Junho means inheriting his entire complicated family, including the one man she swore she'd never see again. ***. The wedding was small, intimate, perfect. Junho's father attended with his new wife, a few close friends, Myra's mother via video call from Lagos. They'd kept it quiet, kept it theirs. Junho's father was kind but distant, still grieving his first wife even 15 years after her death. He spoke warmly about his business, coolly about his personal life, and not at all about his stepson Young-tae, who was running operations in Singapore. You have a stepbrother? Mira had asked Junho later that night, in their hotel room after the reception. Half-brother, technically. Different mothers. Junho had loosened his tie, looking uncomfortable. Our father remarried when I was 12. Young-tae's mother died when he was 6, so my father took him in. We grew up together, sort of. We were never close. Different personalities. Different approaches to life. He'd pulled her close, kissing her forehead. He's been in Singapore for 3 years. I doubt you'll meet him anytime soon. She should have told him then. Should have said, actually, I know Young-tae. Actually, we dated. Actually, he's the reason I know what unhealthy love looks like. But she didn't want their wedding night shadowed by ghosts. So she stayed quiet. And that silence would cost them both. 3 months into their marriage, Junho's father announced he was stepping down from the board of directors. And Young-tae, who'd been running operations in Singapore, was coming home to take his place. Mira had exactly 4 days to prepare herself. It wasn't enough. She finally told Junho the night before the family dinner, sitting on their balcony with wine and nerves and 3 years of secrets. I need to tell you something, she'd started, watching the city lights blur below them. Okay. He'd set down his glass, giving her his full attention. That was Junho, present, focused, never distracted. Your stepbrother, Young-tae. She'd taken a breath. I know him. You've met. We dated. For about 18 months. 3 years ago, before I met you. Junho had gone very still. Not angry, calculating. Processing. You dated my brother. I didn't know he was your brother. You never talked about him, and he never mentioned you. Different last names, different mothers. I'm not angry at you for the past, Mira. His hand had found hers. But I need to know, is this going to be a problem? It ended badly. I left him because the relationship was unhealthy. Controlling. Possessive. And you think seeing you married to me will. I don't know what he'll do. I just know he didn't handle our breakup well. He tried to contact me for months after I left. Junho had pulled her into his arms then, solid and steady. Then we'll handle it together. You're not alone in this. You're not worried? I'm careful, he'd corrected. There's a difference. Young-tae is brilliant and unstable in equal measure. But you chose me. You married me. And I trust you. I love you, she'd whispered. I love you too. no matter what happens tomorrow. The family dinner was held at the main house in Ambw, a sprawling traditional hanok that Junho's father had modernized with underfloor heating and a wine cellar that cost more than most people's homes. She and Junho arrived together, his hand steady on her lower back as they entered. He'd been quiet in the car, thoughtful, and she'd wondered if he was more worried than he'd admitted. "You okay?" he'd asked as they pulled up. "Always am when I'm with you." It was true. Mostly. Young-tae was already there, standing by the koi pond in the courtyard, cigarette burning between his fingers. He'd cut his hair shorter, traded his usual black for charcoal gray, but the energy was the same, coiled power barely restrained. Their eyes met across 20 feet of carefully manicured garden. Recognition hit like lightning. She watched the sequence of emotions cross his face: surprise, confusion, realization, then something darker, something hungry. For 3 seconds, the world narrowed to just the two of them. All the history, the passion, the pain compressed into a single point of contact. Then Junho's hand pressed gently against her back. "Come on, let's get this over with." Dinner was excruciating. Young-tae sat directly across from her, making polite conversation about Singapore's tech scene while his eyes said everything his mouth didn't. Junho kept his arm draped casually over the back of her chair, not possessive, just present. A quiet statement: "She's with me." The conversation flowed around them, Junho's father discussing quarterly reports, his stepmother asking about the wedding, business associates making small talk about market trends. And through it all, Young-tae watched Mira like she was a puzzle he was determined to solve. "So Mira," Young-tae said as they waited for dessert, voice perfectly pleasant, "how are you finding married life?" "Wonderful." She didn't flinch. "Junho makes it easy." "Does he?" Young-tae smiled, all teeth and no warmth. "He always was good at easy." Junho's hand moved to her shoulder, thumb brushing against her collarbone, a small gesture of solidarity. "And you were always good at complication, Hyung. Some things don't change." The temperature at the table dropped 10 degrees. Junho's father cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should discuss the transition timeline. Young-tae, you'll need to meet with the department heads next week." "Of course." Young-tae interrupted smoothly, never taking his eyes off Mira. "I'm looking forward to being back in Seoul. So many things I've missed." The emphasis on things was deliberate. After dinner, Mira excused herself to the bathroom. She stood at the sink, running cold water over her wrists, trying to settle the hammering in her chest. The door opened behind her. "This is the women's room," she said without turning. "I know." Young-tae's reflection appeared in the mirror beside hers. "We need to talk." "No, we don't. Mira, we have nothing to say to each other." She turned off the water, reaching for a towel. "What we had is done. It's been done. You married my brother. I married the man I love. You married safety." He moved closer, not touching, but close enough that she could smell his cologne, the same one he'd worn 3 years ago. "You married someone who won't challenge you, won't push you, won't make you feel, won't suffocate me." She finally turned to face him. "Won't show up at my job, won't go through my phone, won't make me feel like I'm losing myself just to keep the peace." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain maybe, or anger. "I loved you," he said quietly. "I know. That was the problem." She moved toward the door, but his next words stopped her. "Does he know? About us?" "He knows everything. And he still married you." Young-tae's laugh was bitter. "He's more secure than I gave him credit for. He's more healthy than you ever were." She walked out, leaving him standing alone in the bathroom, and didn't look back. That night, in their own penthouse across the city, Mira lay curled against Junho's chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "You want to talk about it?" he asked into the darkness. "About what?" "About the fact that my stepbrother looked at you tonight like you were the last breath of air in a burning building." She went still. "Junho, I'm not angry." His voice was soft, certain. "I'm not threatened. I know who you chose and why you chose me." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "But I also know my brother. And I know what obsession looks like in our family." "What do you mean?" He was quiet for a moment, thumb still tracing circles on her skin. "Our father was obsessed with my mother, completely consumed by her. When she died, he didn't grieve, he stopped living. He's been a ghost for 15 years, going through motions." His voice dropped. Young-tae saw that growing up, learned that love was supposed to be all-consuming or it wasn't real. "And you?" "I learned the opposite. I saw how destructive that kind of love was. How it poisoned everything. He tilted her chin up to look at him. So I promised myself that when I loved someone, I'd love them in a way that made them more themselves, not less. Tears pricked her eyes. You do. You make me more. Good. He kissed her softly. Because Young Tae is going to try to prove that what we have isn't real. That safety equals boredom. That passion requires pain. How do you know? Because I know my brother. And I know what obsession looks like. Drop a comment right now and tell me, do you think Young Tae can change, or is obsession something you can never really escape? Because what happens next is going to test everything Mira and Junho have built together. Asterisk asterisk. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in psychological warfare disguised as family obligation. Young Tae showed up everywhere. At the charity breakfast Mira organized for immigrant youth programs, sitting in the back row, checkbook ready, donating twice what anyone else contributed. At the restaurant where she and Junho had their weekly date night, 3 tables away with a business associate, coincidentally choosing the same evening. At the gym she frequented at 6 in the morning, suddenly a new member, complete with a personal trainer whose schedule perfectly aligned with hers. At the bookstore where she bought her monthly stack of novels, browsing the same sections, making recommendations, remembering her favorite genres from 3 years ago. This is getting ridiculous, Mira told Junho after the 4th coincidental meeting in as many days. They were in his home office, her perched on the edge of his desk while he reviewed contracts, his reading glasses making him look unfairly distinguished. It's intentional, Junho said calmly, signing a document. He's reminding you he exists. Reminding you of your history. I don't need reminding. I need him to stop. Do you want me to talk to him? No. She sighed, running a hand through her curls. Yes. I don't know. If you confront him, it might make it worse. Make him think he's getting to us. He is getting to us. You're stressed. I'm distracted. Junho set down his pen, removed his glasses, and pulled her into his lap in one smooth motion. Here's what I know. You're not a possession to be won. You're not a prize in some competition between me and my brother. You're my wife because we chose each other, freely, with full knowledge of who we are. He kissed her temple. So if Young Tae wants to waste his time circling something he can never have, let him. It doesn't change us. You're too calm about this. One of us has to be. He smiled against her hair. Besides, I trust you. That's the difference between how I love you and how he loved you. I don't need to control you to keep you. God, she loved this man. But Junho's calm didn't account for Young Tae's persistence. 2 days later, she was leaving her office building when a familiar black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down, revealing Young Tae in the driver's seat. Get in, he said. Absolutely not. I'm not kidnapping you. I just want to talk. Then talk from there. Mira, please. 5 minutes. I promise I'll leave you alone after this. She should have walked away. Should have called Junho. Should have done literally anything other than what she did. But some self-destructive part of her, the part that still remembered loving him, needed closure. She got in the car. Young Tae drove them to the Han River, parked along the walkway where they used to come 3 years ago. Couples strolled past, teenagers on bikes, joggers with their dogs. Normal people living normal lives. You can't keep doing this, she said, staring straight ahead. Showing up everywhere. Watching me. It's not healthy. I know. Then stop. I can't. His hands gripped the steering wheel. I see you with him, and it's like watching someone sleepwalk through life. I'm not sleepwalking. I'm happy. You're comfortable. There's a difference. Stop telling me what I feel. She turned to face him. You did this 3 years ago. Decided you knew my emotions better than I did. Decided that if I wasn't on fire, I must be frozen. Weren't you, though? He turned too, eyes intense. When we were together, you were alive. You laughed louder. You took risks. You felt things deeply. I also cried myself to sleep. Had panic attacks. Started hiding parts of myself just to avoid conflict. I would have changed. You keep saying that. But you never did. Not in 18 months. Not through countless conversations where I told you exactly what I needed. Because you never gave me a real chance. I gave you everything. Her voice broke. I gave you access to every part of my life. Changed my whole personality to fit what you needed. Made myself smaller and smaller until I barely existed. She was crying now, years of held-back words flooding out. And it still wasn't enough. Because you didn't want a partner, Young Tae. You wanted a possession. Silence filled the car. Is that really how you saw it? He asked quietly. That's how it was. And Junho? He doesn't possess you. No. He chooses me. Every day? Consciously. Without needing to consume me to feel secure. She wiped her tears. He asks where I'm going because he cares, not because he's checking up on me. He meets my friends because he wants to know my world, not because he's threatened by it. He gives me space to grow because my growth doesn't scare him. Sounds boring. Sounds healthy. Young-tae laughed, sharp, bitter. You've really convinced yourself, haven't you, that what you have with him is better? It is better. It's sustainable. It's built on trust instead of fear. But does it make you feel alive? Yes. She met his eyes. It makes me feel alive in a way that lasts. Not like burning bright and then crashing, but like steady sunlight that keeps growing. She reached for the door handle. I'm not done, Young-tae said. Yes, you are. You just don't know it yet. She got out of the car and called a taxi, leaving him sitting alone by the river. When she got home, Junho was in the kitchen making dinner, her mother's recipe for ofada stew that she'd taught him over video call. He looked up when she entered, immediately reading her tear-stained face. What happened? She told him everything. The car ride, the conversation, Young-tae's inability to let go. Junho listened without interruption, then pulled her into his arms. I'm sorry, he said. For what? That you have to keep fighting battles you already won 3 years ago. He pulled back to look at her. You want me to talk to him? Set boundaries. Would you? Of course. You're my wife. Your peace of mind matters more than family politics. This was love. This was what it was supposed to feel like. The confrontation came 2 days later, at a corporate event celebrating a merger between Junho's tech company and a Japanese robotics firm. Black tie affair, 200 guests, press everywhere. Mira wore midnight blue silk that hugged every curve, Junho's arm around her waist like an anchor. They worked the room together, a unit, finishing each other's sentences when talking to investors. Young-tae appeared during the cocktail hour, whiskey in hand, eyes tracking Mira like a predator watching prey. Dance with me, he said when Junho stepped away to take a call from his lead developer. I don't think that's a good idea. I'm not asking for a good idea. I'm asking for a dance. He extended his hand. For old time's sake. She should have said no. Should have walked away. But there were cameras everywhere, business partners watching, and causing a scene would only feed the tabloids. So she took his hand, let him lead her to the dance floor, and tried to ignore the way her body remembered his touch even as her mind rejected it. You look happy, Young-tae said as they swayed to a string quartet's rendition of a jazz standard. I am happy. Are you? Or are you just comfortable? There's nothing wrong with comfortable. There's nothing right about it either. His hand pressed against her lower back, pulling her incrementally closer. Remember when we used to dance in my apartment at 3 in the morning? When we'd play music so loud the neighbors complained? When we were too alive to sleep? I remember being exhausted. I remember feeling like I was constantly on a roller coaster I couldn't get off. You loved that roller coaster. I loved you. She met his eyes directly. Past tense. And yes, it was intense and passionate and all-consuming. It was also toxic and unhealthy and ultimately unsustainable. Says who? Says me. Says the woman who had anxiety attacks every time you didn't text back within 5 minutes. Says the woman who started hiding parts of herself just to avoid arguments. The music swelled around them. I would have changed, Young-tae said quietly. If you'd stayed, if you'd told me. I did tell you. Multiple times. You just didn't hear it because you were too busy loving me the only way you knew how. Like I was something you owned instead of someone you chose. His jaw clenched. And Junho. He chooses you. Every day? Consciously. Without needing to consume me to feel secure. How boring. How beautiful. The song ended. She stepped back immediately, putting space between them. Thank you for the dance, she said formally. Mira. His hand caught her wrist. Not hard, but firm. This isn't over. Yes, she said, pulling free. It is. She found Junho on the terrace. Phone call finished. Tie loosened slightly in the evening air. He turned when he heard her heels on marble, eyes doing a quick assessment, reading her body language like he read code, seeing everything. You okay? I am now. He pulled her close, one hand cupping her face. Did he say something? He said a lot of things. None of them true. Junho kissed her, soft, thorough, claiming nothing and promising everything. When they broke apart, she saw Young-tae watching from the doorway, face unreadable. Let him watch, she thought. Let him see what real love looks like. If you're Team Junho and Mira and want to see them win against Youngtae's obsession, smash that like button. And don't forget to subscribe because this story is about to take a dark turn that no one sees coming. Asterisk asterisk. The next 3 days were quiet. Too quiet. Youngtae didn't show up anywhere. Didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't mysteriously appear at any of Myra's usual haunts. I don't trust it, Junho said over breakfast on Thursday morning, scrolling through his tablet while Mira worked on her laptop across from him. Maybe he finally got the message. My brother doesn't get messages. He sends them. Junho was right. The message came that afternoon in the form of a phone call from Junho's assistant, Minji. Sir, there's been an issue with the merger. The Japanese partners are pulling out. They're citing concerns about company stability and leadership. Junho's expression didn't change, but Mira saw his grip tighten on his coffee cup. What kind of concerns? There are rumors circulating about financial irregularities. Anonymous sources claiming that some of the company's recent acquisitions were funded through questionable means. That's bullshit. I know, sir. But the press has picked it up. Bloomberg is running a story in an hour. The Wall Street Journal is asking for comment. Get legal on the phone. PR2. And find out where these rumors started. Mira watched her husband shift into crisis mode. Calls to the legal team, the PR firm, the board of directors. His movements were precise, controlled, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. When he finally hung up the last call, she crossed to him, hands on his shoulders. This is Youngtae, she said quietly. I know. Why would he do this? This hurts the whole family business. Because he doesn't care about the business. Junho turned to face her, hands settling on her waist. He cares about destabilizing our life. If I'm fighting fires at work, I'm distracted at home. If our life feels chaotic and unsafe, I might run. The realization hit her like cold water. He's not trying to destroy you. He's trying to destroy my sense of security. So I'll be there when you need solid ground. Junho pulled her close, forehead resting against hers. Listen to me. We're going to handle this. Together. The rumors are baseless. Our lawyers will tear them apart. The merger might be delayed, but it won't fall through. And Youngtae? His eyes hardened. Youngtae is going to learn that loving you means respecting your choices, even when he doesn't like them. I hate that he's doing this to you. He's not doing this to me. He's doing this to us. There's a difference. They spent the rest of the day managing the crisis. Legal teams drafted cease and desist letters. PR crafted careful statements. Junho personally called the Japanese partners, walked them through the company's financials, proved beyond doubt that the rumors were fabricated. By evening, the immediate danger had passed. The merger was still on shaky ground, but not dead. I need to go meet with the board, Junho said around 7, loosening his tie. Make sure everyone's aligned on messaging. You want me to come? No. Stay here, relax. I'll be back by 10. He kissed her goodbye, lingering, like he was reluctant to leave. Drive safe, she said. Always. Those were the last words they exchanged before everything changed. Junho was 3 blocks from home, driving through the quiet streets of Gangnam, when a delivery truck ran a red light. He saw it coming. Had maybe 2 seconds to react. Enough time to think this is bad before metal met metal in an explosion of sound and force. The Tesla's safety systems kicked in immediately, airbags deploying, frame crumpling in calculated ways to absorb impact, automatic emergency call going out to emergency services. Junho felt his ribs crack, felt his head snap forward despite the airbag, felt the world spin and tilt, and then go dark. Mira got the call at 8:47 p.m. Mrs. Lee? This is Seoul National Hospital. Your husband has been in an accident. The world stopped. Is he alive? He's alive. He's in surgery now. You should come. She didn't remember the drive to the hospital. Didn't remember parking or running through the emergency room doors or demanding to see him. She just remembered the smell, antiseptic and fear and the metallic tang of blood. He's stable. The trauma surgeon told her, still in scrubs stained with what she refused to believe was Junho's blood. Concussion, 3 broken ribs, deep laceration to the shoulder that required 57 stitches. Lucky, considering. The airbag deployed perfectly. Another few inches, and we'd be having a different conversation. Can I see him? He's sedated in ICU. Room 4. But yes. That's where she'd been for the past 6 hours. standing outside room 4, watching through the small window as machines breathed for her husband, monitoring every beat of his heart. That's where Young-tae found her. You always loved me more when I was dangerous. And now, standing in that hospital corridor with Young-tae's eyes burning into her, and Junho's unconscious form behind the glass, Mira felt something inside her crystallize into absolute clarity. Did you do this? Her voice was barely a whisper. Do what? The accident. The truck. Did you? God, no. Young-tae looked genuinely horrified. Mira, I would never. Jesus, you think I try to kill my own brother? I think you'd do anything to get what you want. Not that. Never that. He stepped closer. But I won't lie and say I'm not glad it happened. The admission hung between them like poison gas. You're glad, Mira repeated slowly, carefully, like she was handling explosives, that Junho is in the hospital. I'm glad you're finally seeing the truth. That life with him isn't as safe as you thought. That stability is an illusion. That the only real thing is what we had, raw and honest, and sick. She cut him off, voice sharp as a blade. What we had was sick, Young-tae. You were sick. And I was so desperate to feel wanted that I mistook your obsession for devotion. That's not true. Yes, it is. And the worst part? I enabled it. I let you convince me that love was supposed to hurt. That if it didn't consume me, it wasn't real. Behind her, through the glass, a monitor beeped steadily. Proof that Junho was alive. Proof that healthy love existed. I loved you, Young-tae said, and for the first time, his voice cracked. I still love you. I know. And she did. She could see it in every tense line of his body, every desperate word. But your love is a cage, Young-tae. And I'm done being a bird with clipped wings. She turned away from him, hand on the door, to Junho's room. If you ever really loved me, she said without looking back, you'll let me go. Not for Junho. For me. Because I deserve a love that doesn't break me to prove its strength. She walked through the door and didn't look back. Inside the ICU room, she pulled a chair close to Junho's bed, took his hand in hers, careful of the 4-line, and let herself cry. For the fear. For the relief. For the exhausting weight of 3 years of running from a past that refused to stay buried. You have to wake up, she whispered to his unconscious form. Because I'm not done choosing you yet. His fingers twitched against hers. Just the smallest movement, but enough. Junho woke up 6 hours later, groggy from pain medication and confused about where he was. Hey, Mira said from her chair, where she'd been keeping vigil all night. Welcome back. What happened? Truck ran a red light. Hit your driver's side. You've been out for about 8 hours. He processed this, eyes scanning the room, taking inventory of his injuries. How bad? 3 broken ribs, concussion, 57 stitches in your shoulder. Could have been worse. Could have been better. He tried to sit up, winced, gave up. Young-tae was here. How did you? I can see it on your face. What happened? She told him everything. The conversation in the hallway. Young-tae's admission that he was glad about the accident. The final confrontation. Junho listened quietly, his hand holding hers the whole time. I'm sorry, he said when she finished. For what? That you had to deal with that alone. That my being here put you in that position. Junho, you were unconscious in a hospital bed. You're allowed to not be available for every crisis. Still, he squeezed her hand gently. You shouldn't have had to face him alone. I wasn't alone. You were right here. She touched her chest. The version of you I carry with me. The one that reminds me what healthy love feels like. Philosophical for 3 in the morning. Traumatic events make me deep. He smiled, exhausted but real. Come here. She stood, carefully maneuvered herself onto the bed beside him, mindful of his injuries. He wrapped his good arm around her, and she settled against his uninjured side. We're going to be okay, he said into her hair. I know. Young-tae is going to need to be dealt with. I know that too. They lay in silence for a while, listening to the steady beep of monitors, the distant sounds of the hospital waking up for a new day. Junho. Yeah. When this is over, when you're healed and Young-tae is handled and life goes back to normal, I want to renew our vows. Why? Because I want to choose you again. Publicly. With full knowledge of everything we've survived. He kissed the top of her head. Okay. But I'm writing my own vows this time. Deal. Comment below if you're crying right now because same. And if you want to see how this love triangle finally resolves, You better hit subscribe because the final confrontation is coming and it's going to be explosive. Asterisk asterisk. Junho was discharged 3 days later with strict instructions to rest. They went home to their penthouse, settled into a new routine of gentle recovery and fierce gratitude. But the investigation into the accident revealed something troubling. The truck driver, a man named Kim Sung-min with a clean record and 3 kids, claimed he'd been paid 5 million won to cause a minor accident with Junho's car. Not to kill anyone, he'd told police, crying. Just to scare him. They said it would be a small bump. I didn't mean for it to be so bad. The money had been wired from an offshore account that took forensic accountants a week to trace. It led to a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. Then another shell company. Then another. The trail ended at a company owned by Young Tae. He paid someone to run you off the road, Mira said, staring at the report in disbelief. They were sitting on their couch, Junho's ribs still taped, fury and betrayal warring in both their eyes. He paid someone to scare me, Junho corrected quietly. There's a difference. There's really not. Legally there is. Intent matters. You're defending him? I'm being accurate. He set the report aside. Young Tae is many things, obsessed, damaged, delusional. But I don't think he wanted me dead. Just injured enough to make me feel unsafe. Exactly. Mira stood, pacing the living room. We need to go to the police. Press charges. Something. If we do that, it destroys the family. The business. Everything our father built. I don't care about the business. I do. Junho's voice was firm. Because people depend on that business. Employees, investors, clients. Hundreds of families rely on those paychecks. So what do? We handle it ourselves. They called Young Tae that evening. Told him to come to the penthouse. Neutral ground. No family interference. No lawyers. Just the 3 of them and the truth. He arrived at 8 o'clock, still in his work suit, looking tired in a way Mira had never seen. Like he hadn't slept in days. Like the weight of what he'd done was finally registering. I know why you called, he said before anyone could speak, standing in their entryway like a condemned man awaiting judgment. The investigation. The truck driver. The money trail. You paid someone to run me off the road. Junho's voice was level, controlled, which made it more terrifying than if he'd been shouting. Your own brother. I paid someone to scare you. To make you understand that your life, your perfect safe bubble, it's not as solid as you think. By almost killing me. The plan was minor impact. A fender bender. Enough to shake you. Make you think about mortality, about how fragile everything is. Young Tae's hands clenched into fists. It went wrong. He hit harder than he was supposed to. I never wanted you actually hurt. But you didn't care if he was, Mira interrupted, voice sharp. You cared more about proving a point to me than about your brother's safety. I cared about making you see the truth. What truth? She moved closer, anger propelling her forward. That you're unstable? That you're willing to commit actual crimes to get what you want? That the man I left 3 years ago has only gotten worse? Young Tae flinched like she'd slapped him. I'm trying to save you. From what? Her voice rose. From a man who respects me? Who trusts me? Who doesn't need to orchestrate chaos to feel important in my life? From settling for half a life. Young Tae shouted back, composure finally cracking. From spending the next 50 years in comfortable boredom, wondering what could have been if you'd just been brave enough. I was brave. Myra's voice broke. I was brave when I left you. When I chose myself over your version of love. When I decided that surviving was more important than burning bright. You were a coward. You ran because loving me was hard. I ran because loving you was impossible without destroying myself in the process. The words hung in the air like shattered glass. Junho stood slowly, carefully, one hand pressed to his ribs. He crossed to where Young Tae stood, and for a moment, Mira thought there might be violence. Instead, Junho's voice came out quiet, almost gentle. You're right about one thing, he said, meeting his stepbrother's eyes. Loving Mira is hard. She's brilliant and complicated and challenges me every day. She pushes me to be better, calls me out when I'm wrong, refuses to let me hide behind work when things get difficult. Young Tae said nothing. But here's what you never understood, Junho continued. Hard doesn't mean destructive. Challenge doesn't mean chaos. Passion doesn't require pain. He paused, letting the words sink in. You loved her the only way you knew how. Intensely, possessively, like she was oxygen and you were drowning. But loving someone doesn't mean you own them. It doesn't mean they owe you their future because you had their past. You don't understand. I understand exactly. Junho cut him off. I understand that you're in pain. That losing her broke something in you. That seeing her happy with someone else, with me, feels like salt in an open wound. His eyes held his stepbrother's. But that's not her responsibility to fix. She doesn't exist to heal you. Young Tae's face crumpled for just a second, a glimpse of the raw hurt beneath the obsession. The scared little boy who'd lost his mother at 6, who'd learned that love meant holding on so tight you left marks. She was everything, he whispered. She was a person, Junho corrected gently. A person who deserved better than what you were giving her. And she had the courage to choose better. Mira moved to stand beside her husband, her hand finding his. I did love you, she told Young Tae, needing him to hear it one final time. I loved you with everything I had. We stayed up until 4 in the morning talking about philosophy. You knew exactly how I took my coffee. You learned Yoruba phrases to make me smile. You made me feel seen in a way I'd never experienced before. Young Tae's eyes glistened. But that love was killing me piece by piece, she continued, voice steady. Every time I compromised myself to keep the peace. Every time I made myself smaller to fit into your need for control. Every time I chose your comfort over my growth. I was disappearing, Young Tae, and I couldn't keep drowning while hoping you'd learn to swim. I would have changed. Maybe, maybe not. She met his eyes directly, but I couldn't wait around to find out. I couldn't sacrifice who I was on the altar of who you might become. And he did. Young Tae gestured to Junho, voice bitter. He just magically knew how to love you perfectly? No, Junho answered. I'm not perfect. I work too much sometimes. I get distant when I'm stressed. I'm not naturally affectionate. I've had to learn how to communicate better, how to show up fully even when it's uncomfortable, how to let her in when every instinct tells me to solve problems alone. He squeezed Myra's hand. But the difference is, I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to be better for her, not despite her. And when she tells me something hurts, I don't justify it. I fix it. The fight drained out of Young Tae like air from a punctured tire. He sank onto the arm of their white leather couch, head in his hands, shoulders curved in defeat. I don't know how to let you go, he said, muffled against his palms. That's not our problem anymore, Mira said, not unkindly. Young Tae, you need help. Real help. Not from me, not from Junho. From a professional who can help you understand why you love like this. Why you equate possession with devotion. Why losing someone feels like dying. You think I'm crazy. I think you're hurting. And I think you've been hurting so long you've forgotten what healthy feels like. She crouched down to his level, forcing him to look at her. But you have to want to change. For yourself. Not to win me back. Not to prove something to Junho. For you. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in 3 years, she saw him clearly. Not as the man who'd swept her off her feet with grand romantic gestures. Not as the obsessed ex who couldn't let go. But as a deeply broken person who'd never learned that love wasn't supposed to wound. I'm sorry, he said finally, voice raw. For the accident. For stalking you. For making your life hell. For everything. Sorry isn't enough for the accident, Junho said, steel beneath the calm. We're not pressing charges because you're family and because it would destroy the business. But this is your one chance, Hyung. Your only chance. Young Tae looked up at his stepbrother. If you ever come near Mira again, Junho continued, each word precise and final. If you ever try to contact her, manipulate our lives, interfere with our marriage in any way, I will destroy you. Completely. Legally. Financially. Socially. In every way that matters. You'll have nothing left. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Young Tae stood, straightened his jacket, composed himself back into the man who could command boardrooms and intimidate rivals. But there was something different in his eyes now. Something defeated. I'm going back to Singapore, he said. Permanently this time. I'll hand in my resignation from the board next week. You don't have to leave the country. Yes, I do. Young Tae looked at Mira one last time. Because if I stay, I'll keep hoping. And hope is the cruelest thing I could give myself right now. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. Junho, he said without turning around. Yeah. If you ever hurt her, if you ever make her feel the way I made her feel, if you ever take for granted what you have, I will end you. I know. Junho said quietly. That's the one thing we agree on. Young-tae left without another word. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like an ending. Mira sagged against Junho, careful of his injuries, and felt 3 years of tension finally release from her body like a breath she'd been holding too long. Is it over? She asked. Yeah. He kissed the top of her head, then her temple, then found her lips. It's over. They stood there for a long moment, just breathing together, finding their equilibrium again. You meant what you said? She asked. About wanting to grow, about not being perfect? Every word. He pulled back to look at her. Mira, I'm going to mess up. I'm going to work late when I should come home. I'm going to miss cues sometimes. I'm going to be frustratingly logical when you need emotional support. I know, but I will never, never make you feel like you have to shrink yourself to fit into my life. And if I ever do, I want you to call me on it immediately. Deal? She smiled through tears. And I'll mess up too. I'll be too independent sometimes. I'll push you away when I'm scared. I'll try to handle everything alone instead of asking for help. I know, he said, echoing her words. And I'll still choose you. Every single day. Drop a comment right now telling me how you're feeling about this ending, because I need to know if your heart is as full as mine. And don't forget to like this video if you believe in the kind of love that chooses you every single day. Asterisk asterisk. That night, they stood on their balcony overlooking Seoul's glittering lights. Junho was healing, ribs still tender but getting stronger every day. Mira was wrapped in one of his hoodies, her back against his chest, his arms carefully circling her waist. The city breathed below them, neon signs flickering, traffic flowing like rivers of light, millions of lives intersecting and diverging in the endless dance of existence. Do you regret him? Junho asked quietly, the question she knew had been building for weeks. She thought about it, really thought, about the passion that felt like fire, the jealousy that masqueraded as love, the way Young-tae had consumed every corner of her life until there was no room left for herself. The panic attacks and the tears and the constant walking on eggshells, but also the good parts, the laughter and the adventure, the feeling of being utterly wanted, the intensity that made her feel alive in ways she'd never experienced before. I regret who I was when I thought that was love, she said finally, turning in his arms to face him. I regret accepting so little of myself. I regret not knowing my own worth enough to demand better. I regret staying as long as I did. And now I know what love actually looks like. She touched his face, traced the line of his jaw, the small scar above his eyebrow from a childhood bike accident. It looks like you bringing me coffee in bed every morning, even though you're not a morning person. It looks like you asking how my day was, and actually listening to the answer. It looks like you giving me space to grow even when it scares you. It looks like you trusting me enough to tell me when something hurts instead of just fixing it yourself. It does scare me sometimes, he admitted, hands settling on her waist. Watching you become more of yourself. Stronger. More independent. Some part of me worries you'll outgrow me. Realize you don't need me. Never. She kissed him softly. Because you grow with me. That's the difference. We're not trying to consume each other. We're trying to become better together. And every time I grow, you meet me there. You don't pull me back down to keep us level. He pulled her closer, gentle, always so gentle with her, but firm enough that she felt anchored. Safe. Chosen. I love you, he said. Not because I need you. Not because you complete me or fix me or make me whole. I love you because you're you. Brilliant and strong and kind and stubborn as hell. And I get to wake up every day and choose you again. Best decision you ever made? Second best. He grinned. The best decision was that first cup of coffee at the gala when I decided to see where the conversation led. She laughed, the sound carrying across the balcony and into the night. Below them, Seoul pulsed with life. Millions of stories unfolding, millions of hearts learning what it meant to love and be loved. Theirs was just one story, but it was the right one. 3 months later, Mira heard through mutual friends that Young-tae had left Seoul, this time for New York. This time with a therapist's recommendation and a commitment to work on himself. She hoped he found peace. She hoped he learned that love didn't have to hurt to be real. She hoped he found someone who could meet him where he was and grow with him towards something healthy. But mostly, she stopped thinking about him at all, because her life was full of better things. Morning coffee with Junho, discussing their plans for the day while he read the news, and she planned her nonprofit events. Her organization expanding to 3 new cities across South Korea, helping immigrant youth navigate cultural identity just like she had. Junho's company recovering stronger than before, the merger finally going through with better terms. Lazy Sunday mornings in bed where they stayed under the covers until noon. Heated debates about whose turn it was to choose the movie, which somehow always ended with her winning. His grandmother's kimchi recipe that she was finally mastering after 6 months of failed attempts. The way he kissed her forehead when he thought she was sleeping. Teaching him to make jollof rice the way her mother did. Watching him take notes like he was learning code. Video calls with her mother in Lagos where she could finally say, "I'm happy," and mean it completely. One evening, almost a year after Youngtae's departure, Mira and Junho hosted a dinner party at their penthouse. Friends, colleagues, her mother visiting from Lagos, his father and stepmother, the people who'd become their chosen family. They cooked together, her making her mother's jollof rice with perfectly caramelized bottom crust, him attempting japchae with mixed results that had everyone laughing. There was wine and laughter and the kind of easy comfort that came from building a life with intention. From choosing each day to show up as your full self and trust that the person you love would do the same. As the night wound down and guests began to leave, Junho pulled her onto the balcony, the same spot where they'd stood so many times before. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. "If this is another smart home gadget, I swear to God. It's not a gadget." He pulled out a small velvet box, and her heart stuttered. "We're already married, I know, but I realized I never asked you the right way. I never told you all the reasons why." He opened the box. Inside was a new ring, not replacing her wedding band, but complementing it. A simple platinum band with a single engraving inside that made her eyes burn. "You, me, every day." "Mira," he said, taking her hand, voice steady and sure. "I'm not asking you to marry me again. I'm asking you to keep choosing me. Every morning when you wake up and decide who you want to be that day. Every night when we go to sleep and process everything we've survived. Every moment in between when life gets hard or boring or beautiful or complicated. I'm asking you to choose this, us, over and over again. Not because you have to, not because it's easy, but because we're worth it." Tears streamed down her face, catching the city lights. Yes, always yes. Every single day yes. He slid the ring onto her finger beside her wedding band, the old promise and the new one, side by side, then kissed her. Deep and slow and full of promise and presence, and all the days stretched ahead of them. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too," he whispered back. "Healthy, whole, forever." And in that moment, standing on their balcony with souls spread out below them like a carpet of stars, and their future stretching ahead like an open road, Mira understood something fundamental about love that she wished she'd known at 24. Love wasn't supposed to hurt. It wasn't supposed to break you down to build you up. It wasn't supposed to make you smaller or quieter or less yourself. Real love, the kind that lasted through decades and difficulties and all the mundane, beautiful moments in between, was supposed to make you more. More brave because you had someone to catch you if you fell. More kind because you'd experienced kindness daily. More honest because you'd built a foundation of trust. More whole because someone saw all your pieces and loved them anyway. And she had found it. Not in the fire that burned too hot and left scars, but in the steady warmth that would last forever. Not in the love that consumed, but in the love that cultivated. She'd found it in a man who brought her coffee every morning, who listened when she spoke, who grew with her instead of trying to keep her small, who chose her every single day, consciously and completely. And she chose him back, every single day. If this story made you believe in love again, please hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and comment with your biggest takeaway from Mira and Junho's journey. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they deserve a love that chooses them, respects them, and grows with them. Because everyone deserves their Junho. Everyone deserves a love that makes them more, not less. Thank you so much for being here, for letting me tell you this story, and I'll see you in the next one. Remember, real love doesn't hurt. It heals, ***.